Why is it people in your own community who believe these conspiracy theories?
You do realize for this conspiracy to be true, it would take 30 to 50 people.
Oh, that right there is an absolute lie. All it takes is you guys right in that room, sitting in front of that reporter. Who drove the Ford Edge? Why don't you ask that kind of question, Mr. Interviewer? Why would a Ford Edge be parked out there just 10 feet away from John's body and not see anything? That's one of the most massive questions that has not been answered. Yeah, it is really despicable how you guys act there. The supposed law enforcement are the ones running the crime racket.
Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth call, excuse me, Mr. Brian Albert to the stand.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and good afternoon to the jury.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Sure, it's Brian, last name Albert, A-L-B-E-R-T.
And where do you live, sir?
I live in Norwood, Massachusetts.
How long have you lived in Norwood?
Approximately a year.
And who, if anyone, you live in Norwood with?
My wife, Nicole, and my son, Brian, and my son, Brendan.
Actually, just a little bit about your family as far as, let me start with yourself and your wife, Nicole. How long have the two of you been married?
Approximately 29 years.
So, do you have any siblings?
I do.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have 5 brothers and 1 sister. I'm the oldest of 7. Next sibling after me is my sister Kathleen. Then I have a brother Chris, a brother Kevin, a brother Keith, a brother Brendan, and a brother Timmy.
Concerning Tim Albert and this issue, or the investigation where charges were brought against Tim Albert, that was a circumstance in which Tim Albert, in broad daylight, slammed into a parked car belonging to a woman and then fled the scene, correct?
No.
Didn't you follow a trail of transmission fluid or something to find where he had gone?
I did.
And he fled directly to 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
He didn't live there, he went to his brother's house. Brian,
No, that's not correct.
he lived there at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so you follow the trail of whatever it is, fluid trail, all the way to where Tim Albert had fled to, and you basically had no choice. He had just slammed into the back of a car and then fled the scene, isn't that right?
I concluded my investigation by locating the vehicle that had heavy damage.
The vehicle that he hit.
His vehicle.
His vehicle had heavy damage, but so did the vehicle that he hit, correct?
So you had said a minute ago that he hit a parked car. That's incorrect.
Oh, he hit a moving car.
It was a vehicle that was, I believe it was stopped at a light. It wasn't a parked car. It was a vehicle that was stopped.
Okay. Irrespective of whether the engine was running or parked or not, he hit a car
Yes.
with a woman in it, fled the scene, then you find him trying to hide out at 34 Fairview, correct?
He had parked the car at 34 Fairview.
And you didn't have much choice. I mean, there you have it. The evidence is right in front of you. You can't really cover that one up, right?
I would say I did my
Objection,
job.
Your Honor. Move to strike.
So this is voir dire. Could you answer the question, please?
I would say I did my job.
Okay. Did you engage in any kind of a DUI investigation?
We spoke with him.
Did you give him FSTs?
I don't recall if I did. I know I didn't. I don't recall if Officer Good did.
Did you give him a breathalyzer?
I did not.
Did you ask him for a blood test?
I did not.
So no DUI investigation was really undertaken, correct?
Again, I can't recall what Officer Good did, but I was there.
But you didn't do what I just suggested, a full-blown DUI investigation, even though he hit another car and then fled the scene.
We spoke with him, and he gave an explanation.
And that explanation coming from Tim Albert was I'm really sorry I panicked, right?
It was something to that nature.
And he turned around, well, I'll just cut to the chase. Y'all ended up charging him with a misdemeanor, correct?
I believe so.
And he was given diversion,
I don't know.
and his record was wiped clean.
I don't know.
That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Sergeant. You can step down, sir.
Prior to living at your address in Norwood, where did you live before that?
Canton, Mass. In the house on Fairview Road, approximately 11 years.
And in total, about how long have you been a resident in Canton before moving to Norwood?
Approximately 45 years.
That address, that's 34 Fairview Road, is that right?
Yes.
What, if any, relationship did that home or that residence have to your family before you and your wife and your kids moved in?
My parents had lived at that residence prior to us.
So you had spent some of your childhood in that house as well?
Yes.
How long were you a member of the Boston Police Department?
Approximately 30 years.
Within the Boston Police Department, were you assigned to any sort of specific unit or special duties?
It's the Boston Police Fugitive Unit.
Hey, John, how you doing? Fancy seeing you here.
Fugitive Unit. It's the Boston Police Fugitive Unit. Fugitive Unit.
How are you? All right. So how did court go the other day? So, John, I have a question. Did you think that you could outsmart Karen Reed? Did you? Do you think that's funny? Do you think that's funny? How long did I in cold? What is this gentleman doing? Look at that, the Reed Street. Hey, Ken.
It's the Boston Police Fugitive Unit.
Are you worried about what's going to happen to your family when you go to jail?
Don't touch me.
Why are you shaking,
Touch
dude?
me again.
Why are you
Touch me
shaking?
again. Touch me
So,
again.
Jen, are you worried about what's going to happen when your kids go to jail?
Touch me again.
When you go to jail, I apologize. To your children. Are you worried at all about that?
Huh?
What's going on here?
Oh, you're so bad.
Oh, what are we doing?
I'm sure you were.
Jen, did you think that you could outsmart Karen Reed? Yes or no? Did you? Why did you Google how long to die in cold, Jen? Why did you Google how long to die in cold, Jen? Why did you Google how long to die in cold, Jen? Do you have any answer for that?
Is that the perfect?
Do you have any answer for that? Ms. McCabe, do you have any answer for that? Why should I leave, sir? I just have some questions. I just want to know why she Googled how long to die in cold. I just wanted to know why she Googled how long to die in cold. I'm just curious. I'm just curious. I'm just curious. I'm just curious. I'm being assaulted by an umbrella man. What is going on here? What is happening right now? What is happening?
My friend.
When you first sort of got up on the 28th, where were you at that point?
On the 28th, I was in New York. I went to New York for a funeral of a New York City police officer who was killed in the line of duty. We went down the day before, so I believe that was Thursday. I flew to New York. I flew with a friend and a coworker named Eddie Hernandez.
So another Boston police officer?
Yes.
You mentioned your brother Kevin, is that correct?
Yes,
Is he a police officer as well?
he is.
Where is he?
He's a detective in Canton, Massachusetts.
And was he down at this funeral as well?
He was.
And do you know a gentleman by the name of Brian Higgins?
Yes.
And was Brian Higgins at this funeral service as well?
Yes, he was. So I know Brian Higgins initially from work, professional relationship. I've known him known of him for 10 or 15 years. And then the past few years, more recently, we worked together on a closer basis, and I became better friends with him.
And fair to say that when you became better friends with him, you also sort of socialized with him outside of work?
Yes. On the return trip from New York, we drove back. So that weekend there was anticipated snowstorm, and I believe the flight that we were taking with JetBlue may have even been canceled. And Brian Higgins was leaving in a vehicle that morning, so we ended up driving, or after the funeral, we ended up driving with him.
And so it's yourself, Mr. Higgins, and
Eddie Hernandez and my brother Kevin. I initially went to Charlestown to pick up my vehicle. It was at a police station, Charlestown Station. It's a satellite station located in Charlestown.
And after you were dropped off with your vehicle, what kind of vehicle was that?
That was a Ford Edge.
Was that a personal vehicle or work?
Work vehicle.
And so you get dropped back off at your work vehicle. Where did you go?
So from Charlestown, I drove back towards the Canton area, and I met Brian Higgins at a restaurant bar called the Hillside.
Is that in Canton as well?
I believe so. It's on the Canton-Milton line. I believe it sits in Canton. After the drive home, he asked if I wanted to get some food and stop off, and I said yes. We went into the establishment and had a drink and hung out for a while.
And did you order any food there?
I did not. I believe Brian did, though.
Now, when you left the Hillside, Mr. Higgins stayed there?
Yes, he stayed.
And when you came into the waterfall, who, if anyone, was there?
So when I walked in, I saw my wife, my oldest daughter, Caitlin. I saw my brother, Chris, his wife, Julie, my brother-in-law, Matt, and my sister-in-law, Jen.
And your brother-in-law, Matt, and your sister-in-law, Jen, their last name is McCabe, is that right?
Yes.
And if you could, just explain to the jury sort of how you were related as far as what your name is.
So my brother Chris's wife is Julie, and then Nicole's sister is Jen, and then Jen's husband is Matt McCabe.
And is it fair to say that you've probably known Jennifer McCabe about as long as you've known your wife, Nicole?
Yes, since she was a little kid, maybe 6, 7 years old.
What were you drinking then?
I don't recall. I usually drink beer, Mick Ultra, but I can't remember that night what I was drinking.
Now,
After I was there, maybe about a half hour, Brian Higgins arrived at the location.
and if you recall,
Probably after about a half hour later from Brian Higgins arriving, John O'Keefe came into the waterfall with the defendant.
and that would have been probably about 11 o'clock, is that correct?
Yes. So I knew John O'Keefe, but not well. I had only met him 2 times prior to that night. But I knew him to be a Boston cop, and I knew of him, and I knew some things about him. I knew him to be a friend of my sister-in-law Jen and her husband Matt. I knew him to be a friend of my brother Chris and my sister-in-law Julie. I knew him to be a friend of my brother Kevin's. I've heard his name mentioned multiple times, and I knew that he had a horrible couple tragedies in his family, and I knew that he stepped up and decided to take care of his niece and his nephew when they tragically lost their parents.
How would you sort of describe your relationship with John O'Keefe at this time, January 28, 2022?
Although I didn't know him well, I considered him to be a friend, and our relationship was very, very good, cordial, and I considered him to be somebody that I could hang out with and have a good time with.
What, if anything, did you observe as far as what he was wearing, clothing, anything like that?
I don't really remember what he was wearing for clothing. I believe he had a baseball hat on. Other than that, I can't remember his clothing.
And specifically, do you recall anything as far as like a winter jacket or a big coat or anything like that?
I can't say. I wasn't really paying attention to what he was wearing. I don't know.
And as far as just his general features, as far as what you could observe, what, if any, sort of injuries or anything that you observed on his person?
I observed no injuries at that time. But there was some conversation relative to people going to my brother's sub shop, which is across the street, and he was maybe going to make some pizzas for people if they were hungry. So that was discussed.
And did that end up happening?
No, some people didn't want to go over there, and for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. So it ended up being my son Brian's 23rd birthday. So at 12 o'clock, he would be 23. So there was some discussion about if anybody wanted to go by the house to kind of say happy birthday to him. And I know my wife Nicole mentioned it to Jen and Matt, and it was said, I believe, in the group where we were standing. Anybody that was there was welcome to come by if they wanted to. I don't really remember the responses. I don't think I knew for sure if anybody was going to come, except Brian Higgins said he would come by.
He had left around the same time as you.
Yes.
And had Brian Higgins been to your house before?
I believe he was at my house for a high school graduation party. And besides that graduation party, I don't believe he had ever been at my house. I'm sure he walked into the house, to use the bathroom or something that day, but I didn't really notice, whether he went in there or not.
And Your Honor, with court's permission, how far a drive is it from the waterfall to your house?
I would say 5 minutes.
What, if anything, happens sort of as you're coming into your driveway?
It looks like that. It had looked like Brian had gotten there first, Brian Higgins, and he was backing out, so I could pull my car in.
And as far as the vehicle that Mr. Higgins was driving on that evening from the waterfall, was that the same vehicle that he had driven with you back from New York?
No.
And what kind of vehicle was the one that he was driving back from New York, and what kind of vehicle was the one he was driving that night?
So the one back from New York, he was driving a full-size pickup truck. I'm not sure what make or model, but it had a cab on the back, and I believe it's gray. And then that night later in the night at the waterfall, he had a Jeep Wrangler vehicle that I believe is white, but I'm not 100%.
So he had arrived at your house before you, is that correct?
Yes.
And you said it looked like he had done something to the driveway?
He may have skimmed. He had a plow on his truck, and I think he may have skimmed plowed the driveway and then pulled out, and then we pulled in.
How many vehicles did you have?
I believe 3. So I had we had a Ford Explorer, a Cadillac SUV. It's a smaller SUV that my wife Nicole drives, and the Ford Edge that I already spoke of, and I believe we had one more vehicle that one of my kids drove at that time. I'm just trying to remember. It might have been an Escape, maybe a Ford Escape. Someone could have had that at college. Someone could have had that at school, so I don't remember if it was there that night or not.
All the vehicles were essentially like SUV type vehicles.
Yes, we didn't own any sedans or any cars.
The house at 34 Fairview had a car garage.
Yes.
And is the garage something that you or other members of your family would utilize as far as parking vehicles?
No. So unfortunately, we didn't use the garage a lot because we kind of used it for storage, and we had a lot of stuff out there, so we very seldom used it. I believe I pulled in on the left side of the driveway. So no, I don't remember where Brian Higgins parked. I remember him pulling out so I could pull in, and then I didn't really see where he parked.
When you come into your house, we recall how many doors in front of the house are there?
So we have 2 front doors.
And one would be sort of by some steps, is that correct?
There's actually steps on both doors, but one of them is, I guess, considered the front door with a large set of steps.
And they would be sort of brick steps, is that right?
Yes.
And that leads into a foyer area of the house?
Yes.
And the other door, where does that lead?
So the other door opens up right into the we call it the family room, but right into the family room den area.
And do you recall specifically which door you utilized on that evening to go into the house?
I believe I went in the door on the right, which goes into the den. Not really sure what other doors people used. So my son Brian was home. He had 2 friends, I believe Julie and Sarah.
Who, if anyone else, beyond your son and his 2 friends?
And my nephew Colin.
Colin Albert, is that correct?
Yes, Chris and Julie's son Colin.
How old was Colin?
I believe he was just about 18. 17, 18. He's in high school.
He was still in high school at the time?
Yes.
when you walk in, where was Colin in relation to your son and the two girls that he was with?
He was just kind of standing in the kitchen with Brian and the two girls. Brian and the two girls were at the kitchen table, and Colin was just kind of standing there.
And from the time that you arrived home, how long was Colin at your house?
No more than 5 minutes.
And where did he go?
He left. He just said he was getting picked up.
He said he was getting picked up, and a few minutes later he left your house.
Yes, I went and used the bathroom. I came out and he was gone.
Now, at some point subsequent to that, who, if anyone else, arrived or showed up at your house?
After Colin left the house, nobody else arrived at the house.
Your sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, at some point, did they come by?
Yes, I thought you were referring to after they showed up.
So my question is, do you know whether or not when Jennifer McCabe and Matthew McCabe arrived at your house, was Colin still there?
I don't know if he was still there or not. I believe he left before they came, but I'm not 100%.
So you come home and you go to use the restroom, is that correct?
Yes.
When you go to use the restroom, Colin's there, correct?
Yes.
And the McCabe's are not?
They are not.
When you come back from the restroom, Colin's not there?
Yes, Colin was gone.
And the McCabe's are there?
No, I don't believe they had arrived yet.
So they arrived sometime after Colin had left.
Yes.
Did you have any pets at that time?
Yeah, yes, we did.
Okay. And what kind of pets did you have?
We had a dog.
And what kind of dog was that?
So it was a German Shepherd mix.
And what was the name of the dog?
Chloe.
And how long had you and your family had the dog?
We had Chloe for approximately, at that time, maybe 6 or 7 years.
Do you recall how you got the dog or where you got the dog from?
The dog was from a shelter in Dallas, Texas, actually.
So essentially a rescue dog, is that correct?
Yes, rescue dog.
And when you got home,
At some point, I went upstairs to grab the dog and let her out back to use the bathroom.
and you mentioned that there are train tracks that run sort of close to your property, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that just the commuter rail or does the Acela go by or anything else?
I believe there is, in addition to the commuter rail, there's other trains that use that track, yes. You know, on any given day, they can go by 5 or 6 times, you know, morning, you know, more towards the rush hour times, morning, at night, and then sometimes at night, and sometimes during the day. So really all day and night.
And when the trains go by, about how loud is that as far as from your house?
So it's loud, although having lived there for a period of time, I feel like at least I'm kind of immune to the sound. I don't really hear it as much anymore.
So something essentially based on how long you lived there, you really don't even hear it anymore?
Not really, no.
Other than your situation with the dog, was there any point in time where you were not with the group in the kitchen dining area?
No, I was there basically for the whole night, except I think at one point I may have shown Brian Higgins some photos that were in my son's room that were upstairs.
And what kind of photos were you talking about?
So my son Jack, who's one of the twins, was in the Marines or is in the Marines, and we had put some plaques and some stuff in his room upstairs, and Brian Higgins was prior military, as am I. And I thought he would want to see the photos, so I had him look at them.
And that period of time that you were outside of sort of the kitchen dining room area looking at the photos with Mr. Higgins, about how long a period of time are we talking?
Very, very quickly, you know, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes.
Now, at some point over the course of that morning, things started to wind down at your home, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And about what time was that people started to wind down and people started to...
I think Brian left at around 1:30. I believe he was the first to leave. And then others left after that. So I think I popped back down at one point just to see kind of how long people were going to be there. and then went back up. I think Jen and Matt was still there, and the two, Brian's two friends were still there, and my daughter Caitlin.
Would it be unusual for the front doors of your house to remain unlocked overnight?
No.
Is that something that happened on occasion where people were supposed to lock the doors but didn't?
Yes, from time to time, the doors, people would just forget to lock them, or we just didn't lock them. I was awoken that morning to my sister-in-law, Jen, had burst into my room.
Do you know about what time that was?
It was early in the morning, between 6 and 6:30, I would say.
Fair to say that's not a normal occurrence.
No.
And when she burst into your room, can you describe her demeanor or sort of how she appeared when she first came?
She was very upset, almost hysterical.
What, if anything, did she say when she came into the room?
She said something to the effect, John is dead.
Objection.
Next question, please, sustain. Unless you lay a foundation.
Do you know who she was referring to when she initially came?
I initially did not.
About how long was that length of conversation that occurred in your bedroom between yourself, Ms. McCabe, and your wife?
Probably a minute.
And the demeanor that you described as far as Ms. McCabe was concerned is almost hysterical. Was that continuous throughout that initial conversation?
Yes. She was very upset.
And who, if anyone, did she indicate was downstairs, or why did you go downstairs?
She said that the police.
Please, I'm going to allow you to have foundation.
Go ahead.
She said that the police were downstairs.
And so you went downstairs to talk to them.
Yes.
And when you go downstairs, what do you see when you get to sort of the bottom of the stairs?
I saw a Canton police officer downstairs.
So inside your house at that time?
Yes.
And the Canton police officer that's inside your home, did you recognize him?
Yes.
And who did you recognize him?
Last name Lank. So Officer Lank.
Was he someone that you were familiar with?
I knew who he was. Yes.
Did you socialize or friend or anything like that?
I didn't socialize with him. I knew him to be a Canton police officer. I had met him, multiple times, and I knew him to know my brother Chris. I would say more of a professional capacity, and I knew of him, but did not hang out with him socially.
And initially, when you first see Officer Lang, was he by himself, or who, if any, other officers are with?
I believe initially he was by himself.
Did another officer join yourself and Officer Lang at some point?
Yes, I believe another officer came into the house.
Do you know who that officer is?
I don't.
As far as them coming into your house, they were welcome in your house? You didn't say get out or anything like that?
No, of course they were welcome in my house.
And where did you go with the officer sort of in your house? Where did you spoke with the officer, I'm presuming?
Yes, we spoke in the kitchen area.
And when you're speaking with the officer in the kitchen area, who is there?
So my wife Nicole, her sister Jen, and I believe Jen's husband Matt arrived almost the same time that I came downstairs, maybe a minute after.
In between that first speaking with the police and the second time that the police came back to your house, who, if anyone, did you call or notify in regard to the situation that was going on in front of you?
I called Brian Higgins
Why did you call Brian?
because I think it was important for him to know what was going on and that what had happened.
Following your conversation with Mr. Higgins, who, if anyone else, came over to your house?
So Brian Higgins eventually came over to my house, and my sister-in-law Julie also arrived at my house. She has a routine that when it's someone's birthday, she likes to come by and bring like coffee and donuts. So it was Brian's birthday that night, so my sister-in-law Julie was coming by to drop off some donuts and coffee, I think. It was very, very chaotic. unbelievably chaotic morning.
And as far as when that was described to your sister-in-law, Julie, how would you describe sort of her demeanor or her reaction to the news regarding this girl?
Shock. That's how I would describe it. Everybody's reaction that morning was utter shock. And she was upset and looked very, very in shock.
In the course of that day, at some point, did you have occasion to speak with some troopers from the state police?
Yes.
And if you recall, who was it that you spoke with?
So I spoke with Trooper, last name Proctor, and then another trooper, and I don't know the last name, first name Yuri.
Would it be Sergeant Buchanan?
It could be.
And had you met either of those troopers prior to that date?
I had never met Trooper Proctor. I had met Trooper, I forget, what is the last name?
You met Trooper
Yuri. I had met him once or twice before.
Was that in a professional capacity?
Yes.
And where did you speak with them on that?
At my sister-in-law Jen's house. Late morning, early afternoon, the day of the incident. So I don't know the exact time. Before noon, I think. When my sister-in-law Jen and her husband Matt were leaving my house, my sister-in-law was distraught. I wanted to be comforting to them and be there for them if they needed anything, and I drove to their house.
And this is, and speaking of your sister-in-law Jennifer, this is someone you've known since she was how old?
7 years old. She's like a little sister to me.
And at the point that you're going over to the house, did you know that there were going to be troopers from the state police over at the house?
Yes.
And fair to say they asked to talk to you, is that correct?
Yes.
And obviously at some point you moved from the house on Fairview in Canton to York, correct?
Yes.
And when was that sort of first discussed between you and your wife as far as selling the house?
That was discussed in October, November of, it would have been 2021. Around that time, and it was post-COVID, the housing market seemed really good. And my brother, Chris, had sold his house, was in the process and ultimately sold his house around that time. He got a great deal on it. I had known some other people that had sold around that time. And it was a little early for us because our children weren't all necessarily gone yet, but it was close and we thought we could get a good deal for the house. So that's when we started exploring it.
And who, if anyone, did your brother Christopher put you in touch with?
So he put me in touch with a realtor that ultimately sold his house.
Did the sale of your house have anything to do with what occurred there on January 29, 2000?
Absolutely not.
But that's what I get. That's what I get. That's what I get.
Yeah, just one moment now.
That's what I get. That's what I get. That's what I get. But does it come as a surprise to think that I was
Nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
All right. Can I see counsel at sidebar for just a second, please?
that much, but it meant everything to me. And that's what I get. 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 That's what I get.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That's what I get.
All right, so Jones, rather than start cross-examination of Mr. Albert. I'm going to let you break for the day.